O come, thou Lord of might, who to thy tribes on Sinai's height in ancient times didst give the law in cloud and majesty and awe. About 430 years after the Lord first spoke to Abram, who became Abraham, of the great plan to use his descendants to bless the earth, God started speaking to another unexceptional character named Moses. Until the life of Moses, the Israelite people, those who were descended from Abraham, did not have one unifying set of laws or official customs to bind them together. They were not yet a nation, but only a large group of people, who at the time of Moses were under the oppression of the Egyptians. But despite the Egyptians, God's plans were far from compromised. In fact, this was all a part of the plan. Indeed, he meant it for good. The Lord used Moses to free the Israelites from their slavery in Egypt and lead them back to their home in Canaan. But they did not get there quickly. Because of their distrust in the Lord, God caused them to become lost in the desert for 40 years. During these years, the Israelites failed time and time again to become the champions of righteousness, justice, and love that God called them to be. They were far from being perfect representatives of God for the world. Yet again, it seemed that this mission was too big for them to fulfill. But one would come later who would wander the desert for 40 days, tempted in every respect, yet without sin. During their time in the wilderness, God told Moses to bring the people to a mount called Sinai, where he was to speak to them. At Sinai, the Lord showed Moses and the people how great and powerful he was, covering the mountain with a great cloud and descending upon it in fire and smoke. The appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the great cloud and ascended the mountain to hear from the Lord. At the top of the mountain, God gave Moses a set of divine decrees that outlined how his people were to live. The Lord had already promised Abraham that it was through his offspring that all the nations shall be blessed, and he was not going back on nor adding stipulations to his promise. But the laws given on Sinai were added because of transgressions, and only until the offspring should come to whom the promise had been made. These laws were God's gracious gift to the Israelites because they were to act as a guardian for them. The Lord said that these statutes would lead them to bless and be blessed. If you obey, God said, I will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. These laws were like instructions on how to live peacefully and joyfully in the midst of a chaotic world. As God finished giving Moses his laws on Sinai, he gave him one final command, saying, Above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. This was a reminder that only the Lord could bring them to rest in their promised homeland in Canaan, and he would eventually bring them to Canaan after 40 years in the desert through the leadership of a man named Joshua. Moses brought these laws before the people and mediated between them and God when they continually failed to keep them. And Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant, but there was one coming who would be faithful over God's house as a son.